Hey guys, it's Brigitte with San Diego Seed Company. And today I'm going to be talking about two terms that get tossed around a whole bunch in the gardening community and maybe help give you a little bit of clarity on open-pollinated and hybrid. What do those mean? And it's very confusing, trust me. Why does it matter to you? I'm going to get into all of those details. Before I do that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you're notified anytime we put out a video. Okay, so open-pollinated and hybrid are two terms that you see on seed packs, you see in gardening forums, you see in Facebook groups. People talk about it all the time. What does it mean? I'm going to break it down as if you're a brand new gardener and you don't know what those terms mean. So open-pollinated means any plant, like these beautiful zinnias I have here, that are pollinated openly by nature. What that means is they can be pollinated by wind blowing across their flowers and it moves pollen from one plant to another. Or potentially what it means is an insect can land on it and move the pollen. It means that the pollen naturally moves from plant to plant and they can cross-pollinate with plants that are in their likeness. So other zinnias can cross-pollinate with other zinnias easily and naturally. That's what open-pollinated means. Why does it matter to you? Well, if you are saving seeds specifically on a homestead or in your backyard garden, open-pollinated crops are the easiest to save seed from because they will remain true to type. Now, what does true to type mean? Basically, it means you can save the seeds from that plant, and as long as you don't have any other zinnia growing super close that's radically different, it's likely to look exactly like that. This is a good field to show you. So this is a beautiful Queen Lime Blush zinnia. I am saving seeds from these guys, and I only have one variety growing here because I want to save the seed and I want them to be exactly as they are now. I don't want them to cross with another variety. These are actually ready to harvest some of the seeds. These are the seeds right here, these pretty little small seeds. And now they're open pollinated, and so they will likely be just like their parents. Now, hybrid seeds, on the other hand, are a little bit different. What hybrid seeds mean is that in a seed company or at a university or at a plant breeding farm, they will actually take two different varieties of, say, peppers that don't typically cross with each other. And they will cross them in either the field setting where they actually take pollen from one plant and move it to another plant specifically to make that hybridization, that crossing of them, or potentially they do that in a more sophisticated setting where maybe they're doing it in a greenhouse where they're actually cutting off the blooms, taking the pollen out, and then putting it into the other plant. It's a more complicated system. But the reason why people do that and the reason why hybrids exist is there's something called hybrid vigor. When you cross two things like that, they come out, the first generation of them come out growing very quickly and very strong, and they have hybrid vigor, which is really important, especially on a commercial setting when you need plants that grow really well because your livelihood depends on it. Now, what does it matter to you whether or not it's hybrid? Well, a hybrid seed, if you were to save those seeds, because they were forcefully crossed, they will not necessarily be true to type. Meaning that the next generation of those seeds, when you plant them out, you might actually notice that they're very different. In a field, you might notice, wow, well, those are really short and these are really tall, or those are actually yellow and these are actually red. There might be very different characteristics of that saved seed when you plant them out. Why does it matter to you? Well, it doesn't really matter if you're a gardener that is saving seeds just for the fun of it and you really want to see how genetics work. You want to be a scientist in the garden. It doesn't matter to you. You can save those seeds, just know that they might be slightly different. It is important to note that hybrid seeds, they kind of get a little bit of a bad rap, which they shouldn't, because they are an important part of the ways in which we make agriculture a little bit easier for farmers. We create varieties that have disease resistance that maybe they wouldn't typically have. They have vigor, they have different growing habits that are really important. And so they shouldn't be shunned. They're not something that is bad for the environment. They are not the same as GMO seeds. That's a very important distinction. The seeds can be saved, and they can be used on an organic farm, in your backyard garden. A lot of times growers will use hybrid varieties because they have a disease resistance that doesn't naturally occur in the regular variety. A good example is several of our spinach varieties are hybrids, and that's because we need resistance to powdery mildew and downy mildew that is very common when you're growing spinach. Okay, so when we're talking about open pollinated or hybrid seeds, remember that it's very difficult to figure out whether or not something is open pollinated or hybrid just by looking at it. Like, this is a very beautiful, crazy, unique variety of zinnias, but just because they're different looking doesn't automatically mean that they're a hybrid. They could very well be an open pollinated variety of zinnias. It's important to note that because I notice a lot in gardening groups, beginning gardeners, bless them, they don't really know, so they immediately think, oh, it must be a hybrid, or even worse, it must be a GMO. So what is a GMO? A GMO is a genetically modified organism, and what that means is they actually cross two different species of plants in a lab setting. So they do it in a petri dish, and they do it with very sophisticated technology. No garden packet seed company is going to carry GMOs, period. They're very expensive. We wouldn't even want to carry them. They're not available to us. They're only available to really large commercial farms because they're really expensive. They're simply not going to have them. So every seed pack is going to say non-GMO because there's not going to be genetically modified seeds available to the home garden market. Now, there can be hybrids. Now, how do you choose a hybrid from an open pollinated? Well, that's based on your particular gardening and growing needs. Open pollinated varieties can be very fun and very unique and vastly different. Hybrids tend to be a little more they tend to focus a little more on some commercial qualities, so vigor, disease resistance, growth habit, quick to germinate. Those kind of things are really important in a hybrid because they're typically used for more serious growers, those who are growing for an income on a commercial farm or a CSA farm or things like that. They're absolutely 100% safe. No reason why you can't take advantage of them in the garden. You can save the seeds from them, but they may end up being very different in the next season when you plant them out. So that's something in particular that you need to know about the difference between open pollinated and hybrid seeds. Now let me throw another term in there just to confuse you further. The most popular term that you hear all the time when you're talking about seeds is heirloom. What is an heirloom? Well, just like you may have an heirloom from your great-great-grandfather that was passed down generation after generation and now you possess it. Heirloom seeds are exactly that same way. They're open pollinated varieties that have been the seeds have easily been saved and they've been cherished in a community or by a group of people generation after generation after generation. Now, there are lots of different terms on what qualifies as a heirloom. And typically heirlooms tend to be very old, so more than 50 or 60 years old, those varieties have been around. There are some varieties that have been around much, much longer than that. And it's a term that has a little bit of gray area. A lot of the varieties we carry are heirlooms. They're varieties that have been around for a very long time and they're absolutely awesome. They're open pollinated, so you can save the seeds from them. And they are older. Now, some of the varieties we have that are a little bit newer, meaning that they have been developed in the recent, last 20, 30 years, they've been improved upon, they may not be considered heirlooms. So that's really something important to know. In your garden, when you're planting, I encourage you, especially if you're a brand new gardener, to plant varieties that do really well in your area and not be as concerned about heirloom, open pollinated, or hybrid. If you live in an area of, let's say, Washington, where there's a lot of downy mildew and powdery mildew because of the long wet periods, you are likely going to need a hybrid variety of, say, spinach that does really well in your garden. There's nothing wrong with that. We want you to be successful. That's most important. Now, if you're an avid seed saver and you love the stories and the histories that go along with saving seed, I recommend that you purchase heirloom seeds that are open pollinated that you can easily save the seeds from and share with your community. So please, I hope everybody understands that in your garden, all seeds are welcome, whether or not they're open pollinated, hybrid, or heirloom seeds, and no seed company is going to carry GMO seeds that are going to be available to the backyard gardener.